Hello everyone, welcome back to the ReQuest. It's me, Captain Logan, and joining me as always is the magnanimous Austin, also known as the Day Ghost. Hey Austin, remember that we have ReQuest t-shirts? I haven't worn mine in like 4 shows probably.
I know, I was looking for a shirt to wear and I was like, oh, there's my ReQuest shirt. And I pulled that out.
Actually, it looks better and a little bit less cheesy when we're not both wearing it.
That's true too.
We look like employees at the Walmart when we both wear it.
I don't know why though, when you were like Austin, aka the Day Ghost, I had like a weird like flashback to earlier today when Jason messaged me and he was like, hey, I have this like AI I've been using and I'm teaching it about Geekvolution.
He told me about this.
Check this out. And he was like asking it questions about me. And one of them was really funny. It was like, you know, like, who is Austin or something? And it was like, oh, you know, Austin is the Day Ghost, whatever, on Geekvolution. I think it would be really cool if you got to meet him because it would be cool to meet a Canadian in person.
Is that what it said? That's amazing.
Yeah. I don't know why,
did it,
just when you said
did it mention that you were a co-host on the ReQuest?
Yeah, it listed out the different shows. It was like on ReQuest, Superhero Rewind, the Commentary Project, and After Dark, I think is what it said.
Yeah, well, that's because Jason's been feeding it information, so he's been teaching it everything it knows.
Mm-hmm. No, it looks like he's having a lot of fun with that, and it just flashed me back to that.
Yeah, he told me about that today for the first time, and he was reading things it was saying. It was asking questions for the Captain Logan show.
Mm.
It's like, what's the hardest question you've ever gotten on the Captain Logan show? And I was like, this one.
He was showing it to me. It was like, what happens in Spawn Year Day 60? And it was like, blah, 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 this. Why does Brandon like Spawn Year Day, like, 65 or whatever? Oh, it was because Brandon, this is the first episode that he worked on.
Oh, that's really funny.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, man, you're, like, feeding it individual days.
It knows, but yeah. God, Jason's crazy. Anyway, welcome everybody once again to the ReQuest. Tonight we're going to talk about a really interesting film that I had never heard of, and I'm really glad we got to watch. And this is one of the things, by the way, Austin, that I love about the show is, you know, sometimes you'll get a dud you've never heard of, and you'll be like, oh, well, that was odd. I guess I'm glad I know about that. And then sometimes you'll get something like this where you kind of wish you'd seen it years ago. Mm-hmm. And just, you know, always kind of stretching my my knowledge and, you know, making me kind of spread my wings a little bit. This is the China Syndrome from 1979, which sounds like a TOS episode title.
Yeah, it does. It sounds like just a 60s television episode in general. I can see this being like a Twilight Zone too.
Yeah, that's true too. But there's so many syndromes. Mm-hmm. In Star Trek episodes, like this is the one where Kirk goes to a Earth-like planet that's just the country of China.
It's just Earth, except if everything was China.
It was China. It's all China.
And he's like, "My God, Bones, it's all China."
Instead of Chinatown, it's like China Planet.
I want to see that episode.
Yeah. Incidentally, this movie has almost nothing to do with the actual country of China.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was a long stretch where I was like, what is the title about? And then they said it, and I burst out laughing.
You get it halfway through.
Yeah.
But it is like a real theoretical thing, so if you knew anything about nuclear power, you wouldn't know it going in. But the majority of us, and even in 1979, I think, would do the same thing that you did, Austin, where you'd spend half the movie going, I really wonder why it's called. What does this have anything to do with China? And then when you finally get it, it is kind of funny at first glance, but then it's also scary all at the same time. Mm-hmm. When you think about what it means and just how like dramatic and terrifying the situation would be if it went that far. We'll talk in a minute about what we're talking about, but
yeah, I think it was funny to me in that initial moment because my brain immediately went to like the Looney Tunes place, you know, when you
sure.
digging. But no, it is scary when you actually think about it.
I was actually thinking of Big Bird Goes to China. You ever seen that?
I haven't seen like anything Sesame Street.
Big Bird Goes to China, and they also did a Big Bird Goes to Japan. I had an argument with a friend of mine years ago where I was like, "Hey, did you ever see Big Bird Goes to China?" And she goes, "He didn't go to China. He went to Japan." I was like, "No, he went to China." And then we each brought each other the respective tapes that we taped off TV when we were kids, and we watched them both. And it turns out he did go to Japan. And China. Anyway, but Big Bird Goes to China. Big Bird. We'll review this in a minute, I promise. Big Bird is visiting China, and Oscar the Grouch and some of Big Bird's friends want to try to also get to China, so they're like digging a hole trying to get there.
Mhm.
And all I could think of when we got the explanation of what the China syndrome was like Oscar the Grouch digging that hole.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Or like the Simpsons movie where they go through the sinkhole and Wiggum's like, they're China's problem now.
Dude, I was thinking Simpsons all the way through this movie.
Oh,
I don't know
interesting.
if you had that, but right away, because we're dealing with a nuclear power plant that
Oh yeah,
might
with
have a
Adam
nuclear
West.
meltdown, and from the very beginning, I was like, "Oh, this is a Simpsons scenario. This happens in every other Simpsons episode."
No, I did have that, and there was a part of me that went like, oh, if I go back, are there going to be moments that are references to this movie? Because this is a movie that I think was nominated at the Oscars. Like, it's a movie they would have known about.
Here's what's weird about it. So this movie is, by the way, this was requested by Stone Gasman on Patreon. Thanks a lot to him, and he's in the comments, and
Cool.
I'm sure we'll interact with him a little bit through this. He always gives us really interesting movie choices. I don't know why this film, and you and I talked about this privately a little bit, isn't more well known, or that I haven't heard it come up before, because it did well commercially and critically at the time. It was, I think it costs like 13 million to make, or maybe even less than that,
Yeah,
or
it's
maybe it was
definitely
like
not like a big budget.
maybe it was like 5 or 10. Like it was real. I can look at it. I've got it pulled up here on Wikipedia. But like it was not an expensive movie. Yeah, 5.9 million, and it made 51. So like
Oh.
it did super well at the box office relatively, and it was, and again the critics really liked it. Ebert gave it 4 stars, and I've never heard anybody talk about it before, and it's got a lot of people I like. It's got Michael Douglas, it's got Jack Lemmon in one of, if not maybe the best performances I've ever seen from Jack Lemmon.
Yeah, it seems to just be one of those like big movies that everyone at the time really liked, and then it just kind of slipped through the cracks.
It just falls apart. But you'd think this would be like the Poseidon Adventure or something.
Yeah,
Like, how wasn't it that again?
that was a movie I thought of.
Were you thinking of that? Yeah.
Early on, I was like, "Is this a disaster movie? Like, is this going to become the Poseidon Adventure?" Because like I went in not knowing anything, so it was like,
That was
wait a minute.
that was one of the things that kept me on the edge of my seat with this movie. And I will say, like, I was very sucked in
Yeah,
watching
same
this.
here, yeah.
I found it really gripping, and one of the things that made it impossible to look away was I never totally knew what kind of movie I was watching. I didn't really know what the genre was, and it kept kind of taking turns. And I don't mean in that it didn't know what it was. I mean that it was subverting expectations in the best way possible. Like really good command of narrative, really well structured, really well crafted. But characters kept making choices where, something would come up and I'd be like, oh, okay. Like, the first half an hour, I thought this was a movie that was primarily just about journalistic integrity and journalistic sensationalism on television. And there is certainly a major aspect of that, but that's not what the whole movie's about. And it turns out to be as much about the people at the power plant as it is the journalists covering that. And from the beginning, I thought the journalists were, particularly Jane Fonda, was our eyes in. And it ends up not being just about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I thought it was just a situation to propel a story about journalism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it definitely early on felt like that, and then it kind of shifts and changes. And like you, I was really sucked into it. I also have a cold, so like I passed out while watching it, but it was really weird. So I'm like watching a scene where they have this tape, right, where they're trying to discuss what to do with it, and it's like this boardroom scene kind of a thing where they're all just talking, and then I'm like, and I like blip out, and all of a sudden I'm seeing like a car being run off the road, and I'm like, whoa, what is even happening? And then I blip out and the movie's over. And then like I went back and watched it this morning.
Yeah,
But it was
that's a
just
good
like,
call. When it starts to get into because it never becomes an action movie, of course, but
yeah,
when you get into some of like the grander situations and it gets a little bit more action driven, I got worried for a second because I thought it was maybe degenerating in the third act. Into something a lot more Hollywooded, and it doesn't. Like, it really earns all that stuff. But early on, I thought, again, constantly not sure where I stood with it, what the genre was. Early on, I thought it was going to be more of like a one-room drama, or at least a one-location drama.
it does seem like that early on. Yeah.
What I thought was going to happen, a lot of this review is probably going to be us going, this is what I thought was going to happen. This is what actually happened. I thought it was going to be our journalists trapped in a terrible situation in a lockdown at a nuclear power plant where
Yeah, that's when I was thinking of the Poseidon Adventure, where it was
yeah,
like, this is a disaster film. Like, we're stuck in this location. It's going to be, how do we survive? How do we get
yeah,
out?
the core's gonna melt down, and everybody's running around with like chickens with their heads cut off. They don't let anybody leave. And what I thought the setup was, because at the beginning you've got this setup of we're not allowed to film in certain locations, and as soon as you hear that, you know, okay, Michael Douglas is gonna start shooting, and
Yeah.
he's not supposed to do that. And I thought what was gonna happen was maybe like the first 2/3 of the movie would be there's this horrible core meltdown, and then they want to cover it up. And so later in the movie, he's gonna, or maybe right at the end, the last 10 minutes or something, he's gonna want to let the footage out, and then there's drama about that. But all of what I thought was gonna happen happens much earlier, and it's not a full on, a full blown meltdown.
Mhm. No, that
There's a character that has a full blown meltdown,
yeah.
but the Jack Lemmon has a full blown meltdown.
No, what you thought was going to be the last 10 minutes is kind of the movie in a way, where a lot of the movie is kind of discussing that cover up and like what to do about it.
Let me read this random super chat real quick, and then I'll let you get it, just so that we don't forget it, since it is a super chat. And then we'll go ahead and do a quick synopsis so that everybody knows that hasn't seen the film, more or less what happens in it. And then we'll do a little bit more discussion and critique. Tom, $2 super chat. Every episode of animated Men in Black had syndrome, and then I don't know what he's saying. Maybe he means TOS title. I don't know what that means.
Oh, in its title.
Oh, and it's icy. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep,
I have like
that is true.
a good Tom Decipher in my head when I read it. If you
Thanks, Austin.
say
I
it to
appreciate
me,
that.
I can't do it, but if I read it, I can figure it out.
Okay, Austin, would you go ahead and give us a real quick rundown of the story here?
Okay, yes. So this film it stars Jane Fonda, and she is a reporter, and she's, I think, the first female reporter at her the station she works at, and she's kind of just there to be the person who does the fluff pieces, and she
Yeah,
wants
they're sure
to do
making
more
a big
than
deal
that.
out of gender.
Yeah, exactly. What would have been like,
And there's
early
like
on
there's quite a bit of sexual harassment and
yeah, it would have been early on into like starting to get female anchors, I'd imagine, at that point.
you definitely had some just before that, but yeah, it's not
Like
as
around that era, yeah.
yeah, certainly there's a lot more of that by the 80s
Yeah, exactly.
with like Connie Chung and
Yeah, so she is doing this kind of fluff piece.
Also, I promise I won't interject constantly while you're trying to do this, but did you not think that she could, and Fonda's really good, don't get me wrong, but I was thinking it was almost like a tailor-made Sigourney Weaver role.
I didn't think about
the
that.
whole way through.
That's really interesting, yeah.
It could have,
I could see it,
It
yeah.
could have just as easily been Sigourney Weaver.
What I was thinking the whole movie was she reminded me of Amy Adams' Lois Lane.
I wish she got some of this kind of stuff to do.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And she benefits from not having a Superman that she has no chemistry with.
Well, yeah, and there's really no love story here at all.
Yeah, I thought they were going to go that way with her and Michael Douglas early on. I don't know why, but I was like, I could see them maybe doing something with
Well, real early, I'm sorry, we will totally get through a synopsis here in a second. I really thought that maybe they were an item, and then I couldn't tell because he keeps more than flirting with her. Like he slaps her on the ass at one point early
It's
on.
just the
And
70s.
well, that's what I couldn't decide though, is if it was or
Yeah.
not. And I don't mean to bring modern sensibilities to it. Like I get that we were looser about that kind of thing back then, and that when I say sexual harassment, like it watches that way in places, and then in other places, I'm not sure if she's cool with it or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's one bit where her boss is like, "Look, you're not going to get to be a investigative journalist. You're just doing fluff pieces. That's what's getting us the ratings." And he really belittles her as a woman in that job, and especially at the end of that conversation when he says, "I like your hair this way," meaning like don't change anything you're doing and you can't be yourself. But she was, I think, maybe more than putting up with what Michael Douglas was doing. So I don't know if that was just accepted workplace demeanor with him, or if they just had a good rapport, or if maybe they had dated or something. I really wasn't sure. But I thought, like you did later, maybe they would make it clearer that, oh yeah, they were like sleeping together, but I don't think they were.
Hmm. Yeah, well, and I think too with the what you said with the boss is I don't think it's ever like explicitly stated, but I do think there is like a hint that like their ratings are boosted because of like, oh, here's like a hot woman on camera that like people want to look
Oh
at.
no, they're very clear about that.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can tell it's working because when she walks into that bar later, like everybody's hooping and hollering at
That's
her,
true. Yeah. Yeah. No,
and
exactly.
that's why I thought the movie was going to be more about sensationalism than it was,
Hmm.
because they are making a lot of decisions at the newsroom based on what's going to sell versus what stories they really should be covering.
Hmm. No, and I could have gone a lot more into that route, but then it kind of swerves off into the nuclear
But I
stuff.
don't think it's a problem that it doesn't. And I think that there are also some really interesting parallels made in the way that both types of business conduct their business
Hmm.
between
No,
the
I like
newsroom
the way.
and the nuclear power plant.
Mhm. No, I like the way that it parallels, and I think they do a good job of um, like balancing between discussion of journalism and the kind of nuclear power stuff.
Because there's this constant double motivation problem of how much of what we're doing is self-serving and how much of it is because we really owe the public something and we're trying to make sure that we give them what we're supposed to. And you've got this kind of double standard thing that happens with multiple characters where you can tell that they're more nobody's mustache swirly, nobody's one dimensional. Everybody is very complex in that, at almost everybody anyway, in that at one time or another, they think they're helping they're about the public good, but what they're doing is actually more about being self-serving, or it's both at once and they can't decide which should win out, right?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Wait, what else happens in the movie?
Yeah, so Jane Fonda and her cameraman Michael Douglas, who it was weird seeing him with like that like hippie-ish look where he's got
Yeah, but
like
it
the full
works.
facial hair. No, it is. I was just like, oh, that's weird. Like it took me a second to even realize that's who it was.
Yeah,
Uh,
that was not typecasting.
well, I think this is like one of his first roles too.
Well, I was gonna say, but I don't see him do that a lot after this. Like, I don't know if I've ever seen him in a role like that.
Yeah, and I don't think I've ever seen him. I've seen him look young before, but not like that. But anyways, they go to do this fluff piece on this nuclear power plant, and while they're there, they kind of stumble into this meltdown that's about to happen. And Michael Douglas, as Cap kind of alluded to earlier, films it even though they're not supposed to. And then there's a lot of discussion about what to do with the tape. And Michael Douglas at one point steals it from the I'm blanking on the word, like the newsroom,
Just the
whatever.
newsroom, yeah.
Yeah, because they're basically gonna bury it because of this company. And at the same time, you have Jack Lemmon's character, who is the guy that he's like a manager, I think, at the nuclear power plant, and he kind of like works everybody through the meltdown and gets it all worked out. But you kind of see the gradual shift in his character where he's very much with the power plant, and then he sees how they try to cover this up in terms of helping themselves with their bottom line and
He
with
gets
their
massively
business.
disenfranchised.
Yeah, exactly. And you just kind of watch that happen while at the same time you have like the journalism stuff with trying to work out what's happening and what to do with the tape and like all of this stuff and like what the public should know. And
And there really is indeed a cover-up happening.
yeah,
Like, it's
exactly.
a really nuanced kind of conspiracy movie.
hmm Yeah, it is.
Where
Yeah.
it is a conspiracy, but it's not like this, huge like rabbit hole that you go down where it's sort of like a mounting building conspiracy where like at first there's not really that much covering up that they have to do if only Jack Lemmon would stay on board.
hmm No, and it's very like believable. Like it's absolutely stuff that happens today where like you have companies that are like, so okay, so there's another nuclear power plant that the same company is opening. So they kind of, they do their investigation where they kind of half-ass it because they want it to come out good so that they can open up this other company.
And that's what internal
And
investigations are like a lot.
yeah, exactly. So it's like
This
a
movie stays
conspiracy, but like
relevant,
not
by the way.
absolutely. Absolutely. And not just in nuclear power and like everything.
Yeah, no, everything. Government and business, yeah.
Yeah, even down to small businesses, I think kind of fit that investigation stuff.
As always, I don't want to get into current politics too much, but it is a movie that is, very much about real politics. And this had a. Let me back up for a second and just say this had a very like real world quality to it. There were places where I had to remind myself, and I always feel weird when I say this because I know I'm watching a fiction, but there's places where I had to remind myself that I'm not looking at documentary footage. And I really like that feeling where it's like, oh, it's completely duping me.
I mean,
Like,
I feel like
I'm being emotionally manipulated in the most authentic way possible. And somebody in the comments had a really good point in saying that part of that is due to the fact that there is no score.
yeah, no, that's
And
very,
I
it's
guess it
very
didn't occur to me that
naturalistic
this
in that
movie
way.
has no music.
Yeah, I didn't think about that until you just said it, but that is true.
I remember thinking through a lot of it, like how effective it was that there wasn't music in certain scenes, but it didn't occur to me that there wasn't any. And there's not like incidental music either. You don't hear people like playing stuff on the radio or whatever. And then when you get to the end of the movie, it's incredibly effective when we cut to credits and there's no music through the credits. And this isn't a movie that just has like a long opening credit sequence. It's got, black scrolling credits for like a minute and a half, 2 minutes.
hmm Yeah, no, exactly. No, it's very, like I said, naturalistic in that way with no music. You're just kind of in scene. I feel like
Slasher Fred made that point. Thanks to him in the comments, in the live comments.
you could show this to somebody and say, "Hey, this is based on a true story," and like completely sneak, the fact that it is fiction to somebody. I
Well,
I
and
think it's that believable.
bits of it are certainly based on things that actually happened.
No, of course, but I feel like you could be like, "Yeah, this is pretty much exactly what actually happened in real life,"
Yeah.
and show it to somebody, and they probably wouldn't know.
Well, and even when you get to the take over the power plant plot at the end with Jack Lemmon and the gun, like as typical as that might seem in the wrong hands, it watches like something that might actually happen.
hmm Yeah, no, I agree.
It helps that it's not the whole movie.
Yeah,
If this was like Phone Booth and that happens in the first 10 minutes and then the whole movie was that, I don't think it would have worked at all.
I think it also helps that the second the SWAT team comes in, they immediately gun him down without any thought. Like it's just, there you go, we're done. Clear out. We
Dude,
did our
his
jobs.
whole arc is an absolute gut punch.
No, that's really sad.
And I like call me like sappy or whatever. I responded almost audibly when he got killed.
Yeah, I was shocked.
I
Didn't
was
think they were gonna go that way.
absolutely shocked by it. And I was like, "Oh yeah, we made some real movies back in the 70s, man." Like
Yeah, Cap messaged me today, and he was like, "Oh man, real movies." I remember those.
this is a real movie, man. No, I mean, it's visceral, and it's one of those movies where it's got this absolute shock factor without being like gratuitous or like capital S shocking about it. Like, it's shocking because again, I said this already, but it's shocking because it feels real. And what I mean is, it just lets the characters take it where they're gonna take it, and like they feel like real people. And I cannot call it. This movie was super uncallable. The biggest surprise to me, besides his getting gunned down at the end, is when he goes to, and like, this is going to sound like an odd thing to call the biggest surprise. When Jack Lemmon, who has been very hesitant to help the journalists the whole movie, and who loves his job at the power plant. I love, by the way, that moment, Austin, where he breaks down how much he loves his job. And like, this is why I like working at the power plant, and this is why this situation is so difficult for me. Like, I believed in what we were doing. And also I love the distinction between, look, the system that I was there for to watch get put in place, that at the beginning of the movie is wonderfully well broken down for the audience. This is how the nuclear power plant works. This is how nuclear power works. It sets us up so that we'll understand what's happening when it all breaks down. He goes, the system works. What isn't working is that money is getting in the way of our keeping things safe, because it's going to take $20 million to enact the changes we need to make so that the power plant is actually as safe as we're pretending like it is. So the people at the top that run the power plant are cutting corners. And he's sitting there a nervous wreck going, well, crap, if we're not careful, the whole place is going to go up. And like we go through all of the possible ramifications of that happening. Like, people will get cancer in a few years, and the surrounding area will be completely uninhabitable. And he's going to be liable for some of this if he doesn't stand up and do something. But he's also going to lose his job, and his job is his life, and he's not a sad, pathetic character. He loves his life. He loves that his job is his life. Guy. Yeah, and like, he's not talking about how much he wishes he had a family. There's not any of that. He just, like, he's very happy with what he does, and you can't help but feel for him. I mean, I think this movie is. Sorry, I'll get to my point in a second. Yeah. This is a wonderful film. I have a lot to say. This movie is so good at giving you both sides of an argument. It could so easily just be like anti-nuclear power, and you've got people with picket signs in the movie that are anti-nuclear power. I don't think the movie is. I think the movie is anti people putting money first in whatever it is that we're doing. And the ways in which people can, play God and ruin lives when they're not responsible with, massive amounts of power, of course. Impossible not to go to the Spider-Man place whenever we talk about something like this. But, like, how easy would it have been, Austin, to just make this a science fiction film? If this movie is made 40 years before a nuclear power plant was a thing, it's a science fiction film.
Yeah, absolutely. No, one of the things that I think hit me really hard with this movie is the kind of what you're saying with, like, the nuclear power, and like, this is how it works. Like, this is all of the different steps we have in place to make sure nothing goes wrong. And you kind of see that break down. And I think about, like, working at my job, just making car parts, and it's like, I see exactly that when I'm working, where it's like, here are all the steps that we have in place to make sure that there's, like, no issues that go through. And I've seen, like, a million ways in which we are told to break those rules and, like, to pass it through and all the stuff, to help the bottom line. And sure, it's not nuclear power, but, like, that's still going into a car that can kill somebody if, it's done wrong, you know what I mean? So it's like, it was really interesting in that way, where I was like, yeah, no, this happens in, like, every industry.
Yeah, there's a wonderful ethical dilemma that's being played out through the whole movie. But if the film has a moral to the story that you're supposed to, like if it's preaching a sermon, by the end, it is, don't believe anything that people in power tell you. because they have a vested interest, especially when something goes wrong. They have a vested interest in your not knowing what's actually happening. And so, like, did you have what I did at the end? Well, I had a flashback to Iron Man where it was like training exercise.
I thought about that early on when the meltdown's happening, and they're like, "Hey, what's happening?"
It's an unfortunate
just
training exercise.
Yeah, exactly. Meanwhile, like the building's shaking and everyone's freaking out. It's just a training exercise. No worries, no worries.
But yeah, I appreciate you bringing in your real world experience with that, because a lot of industry does unfortunately tend to cut corners like that, and then you try to sweep it under the rug and make it I'm not saying that like that happens everywhere, but how would you know unless you were there? You know, like,
yeah, I used to work
can't...
on a spot that handled like the axles of a car, like for like, and they would test it for speeding up and slowing down, hard brakes. And I've seen parts that failed like the hard brake thing like 50 times but passed once, and they sent it through. And it's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
because how much more expensive is it to actually do it by the book? And I really appreciated the way the movie broke that down, where it goes, okay, we could go in and get the correct x-rays. Because the idea is when the inspector initially did his x-rays, he cut massive corners and he just duplicated one over and over again and called it good. So there's all these different pieces that they don't actually know if they're structurally sound or if they're put in right. I don't actually know anything about nuclear power plants, so I don't 100% understand everything they're talking about. But the basic gist is there was some shoddy workmanship, or at least some shoddy inspecting in the first place, and it's been fine for 6 years, but now, after an earthquake, there's this extra tiny aftershock, which wasn't from the earthquake, it was from the power plant, and that's got to be investigated, but they want to get the plant back online within a couple of days, and if they don't, they're going to lose X amount of millions of dollars every single day, so they've got to hurry up and get back online, but like, at what cost? And the people running the plant are just hoping that that it's not actually dangerous. It's going to be okay. What I never understand about this kind of situation is, yeah, but what's going to happen when it explodes? You know what I mean? Like how are you? If it were me and I'm not obviously in this kind of situation. I'm being an armchair critic right now. I don't know what I would do if it was actually me. When you've got other things on the line, right? Like when you've got a family you're trying to support, you don't want to lose your job. Like there are things at stake the other way. But Austin, how do you sleep at night knowing that there's any percentage chance that you're going to not just blow up a power plant, but ruin like half the state of California? I don't know how you sleep at night.
I mean, when you go to Disneyland and the Pirates of the Caribbean ride breaks down, the pirates don't explode into a nuclear holocaust.
I understood that reference.
Just when you were breaking it down, I was like, wait a minute. You mentioned earlier the sci-fi thing. That's just Jurassic Park.
It is Jurassic Park, yeah.
I didn't have that thought until you were just breaking that down.
No, that's a really good call. But see, the difference with Jurassic Park is that there were kind of mistakes in the system in the first place, where it was too easy, because that was corporate espionage. This is a different situation. Like there's a difference between you just didn't have the right protocols in place, or you didn't vet your employees well enough with Dennis Nedry. with this, it's you had kind of an accidental Dennis Nedry in the first place when you set the whole place up. Not that it was intentional espionage, but that you had somebody that just kind of, you had a company that just rushed things through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's
because I don't think it's the same thing as Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park is preachier than this, admittedly. Where Jurassic Park is, we shouldn't have made the dinosaurs in the first place. If this movie, tell me if you think I'm right about this. And I've only seen the movie once. I might have a somewhat different read on it, after seeing it again. And I definitely want to watch this again. But don't you think that the moral, again, what this movie is saying is not don't use nuclear power. It's we have to really respect that power. And Jurassic Park has some of that, where you do have that speech about like, well, you from Ian Malcolm, you didn't do the work for yourselves, so you don't respect the science. But this, like, I don't think it's saying we should have never invented nuclear power. I think it's saying like we cannot have any humor. We almost have to like worship the nuclear power. If we're gonna actually use it, like we have to understand where our control can be, actually begins and ends with that. I think if this movie used dinosaurs instead of nuclear power, it would have just said like set up the park correctly in the first damn place, and then it's okay to have dinosaurs, right?
Yeah, and I think because you said like the preachy thing, like Jurassic Park is definitely preachier, but that's probably just in terms of it being a blockbuster versus like a drama with this.
No, it's because it adapted Michael Crichton, and that book is 10 times preachier.
Interesting. Okay.
And I like that book, but it's yeah. I mean, Ian Malcolm goes on for pages and pages and pages, and it's like, okay, Crichton, I get it. You're Ian Malcolm.
See, my dad got me that book and Jaws when I was like 10, and I read Jaws and I was like, this is wonderful. And then I read started Jurassic Park and I was like, this is like 20 pages of scientific stuff I don't understand. This is boring. I'm putting it down. I wanted dinosaurs eating people. So that was 10-year-old me. But one day I'll read it.
Oh yeah, it's like, well, and some of that stuff I think is arguably skippable, but
it's just not interesting to a 10-year-old.
No, when you're 10, it reads like Melville's Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Jojiro worship it like in Beneath the Planet of the Apes. Yes, exactly. They worship nuclear power. I appreciate that reference. Have you ever seen that?
I have. That's one where like the planet explodes, right? Or is that the one after?
It's one of the most. Yeah, I know. The second movie they destroy everything, and then there's a third one. But no, that is, and I've never seen that. But Beneath the Planet of the Apes is one of the most depressing movies I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. But this is now up there. This is a depressing movie.
Mm-hmm. No, it definitely is. I mean, you're watching a man slowly realize that, like, his life is a lie, basically.
It's so sad. And then, on the flip side, you have a journalist who might, by the end of the movie, because we don't know, it's ambiguous, and I like that, she might get everything she wanted by the end. She proves how great of an investigative journalist she is. At the very end of the movie, when she is on camera and conflicted about what to say, when she is interviewing the head of the power plant, and he's trying to make this was the most gut-wrenching part of the movie to me, is when that guy is trying to make Jack Lemmon posthumously out to be a nutcase. And a real crazy person. She stands up for him in front of everybody, and I'm like, did you have this? I went, oh, she's gonna lose her job. And then she gets the microphone back, and she stands there and she's not saying anything. It's dead air. Everybody at the news office is kind of freaking out. And finally, she says to the camera, I realize that I've got some bias here, but he was onto something. I knew him. He wouldn't have done what he did if he knew what he was talking about. And then one of the last things that you hear in the movie is I think that her boss is like, she did a really good job. And I'm like, oh, she's going to get what she wanted.
Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, this is the thing that
she's going to get to do hard news after this. And I'm like, one of two things is going to happen with her. She's either going to have a nervous breakdown and change careers, or she's going to be the next Woodward or Bernstein. Like, she's going to decide that this is absolutely her calling, and she's got to uncover things like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like it's probably the latter. Like, I feel like she probably gets what she wants to be, the investigative reporter, and continues on with that.
And so that's a positive thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, like I said, it's a depressive movie because of what happens with Lemmon. But with her, that maybe that's supposed to be like the kind of the hopefulness of the piece. Mm-hmm. But at least there's people like her out there.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's like the hopeful aspect of it, where you see like you have like the everyone's trying to cover it up, but there will always be like the people there that you know will fight to get it out there.
Well, what makes it less cynical is it's not like here's all these horrible people. It's very nuanced. It's
There's just
this
here's people.
Yeah, it's the system is set up to, and when I say the system, I mean the system of business. Is set up to reward people very often for doing the irresponsible thing,
Mhm.
and you have people with all these with this ethical conundrum that keeps coming up of, do I do the right thing, or do I do the thing that's going to allow me to keep my job, or that's going to make the business money so that I can continue on. And I found myself at multiple points, tell me if you had this, not sure who to root for.
Yeah, no, especially when you start to get a conflict between like our main characters, where like you have Michael Douglas kind of goes off on his own, and there's some conflict between him and Jane Fonda and
Yeah.
stuff. There was a lot of just like we keep saying, like you're just kind of watching people, so it's not really like, oh, this character's the hero, that character's the villain. Especially like early on, I assumed that Jack Lemmon's character could would be the antagonist, and then he's not like at all.
No. No, I guess like some of the people that are running the plant are kind of the closest to villains that we get.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. And like their whole thing is really just, you know, like we want to do what we're doing, and it'll be much more of a headache if like the public knows that we had this one thing that didn't really lead to anything.
Yeah, and even when they do the wrong thing, everybody's still more or less sympathetic.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly.
You know, you have kind of some a-holes there at the end of the day, but like I also kind of get where they're coming from, even if I'm not on their side. Like
They're
like
understandable before they're sympathetic, I guess.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, like I always say, dictionary definition sympathetic. Sympathetic doesn't mean likable.
yeah, yeah, of course.
Toward the beginning, you've got this kind of argument that's arising where I was really surprised that I didn't know who I was behind, where I was really seeing both sides of it. When we start questioning whether the illegally gotten footage should be shown, I was like, oh, I don't know whose side I'm on.
Mhm.
Like, I totally understand both sides of this. Like, on the one hand, the footage was gotten uh, under an act that is a felony.
Mhm.
And so I totally get the guy leading the newsroom saying, well, we got this illegally. We can't air it. But then you've got Michael Douglas on the other side saying, but it's the right thing to do. And I'm like, okay, it is and it isn't, though, because, first of all, at the time, the audience doesn't actually know just how unsafe things were, like just how close to imminent doom we got. But Jack Lemmon, who is intelligently characterized as super cool under pressure, don't freak out when something goes wrong. He's exactly the right person to be running a place like that. Like, he should either be running a nuclear power plant or he should be an air traffic controller.
Yeah, or
Like,
the president.
or president. Yeah, he can handle these kinds of, running a really busy steakhouse. Like, he can handle these high pressure kinds of situations. And then when he gets worried, you know it's worse than they're making it out to be, right?
Mhm.
But you still
Yeah.
don't know just how bad it is. So when Michael Douglas goes, well, it's a cover up. It's a cover up. They're trying to hide this information from the public. We've got to get it out. I'm like, well, maybe. Like, I see why he's saying that. I see why the guy who the newsroom manager doesn't want to let that information out because they're gonna get sued and everything. But then I'm thinking, well, hold on. What is Michael Douglas's actual motivation? Because at the same time as he's saying, it's like it's a cover up. We have a responsibility to let this out. In the same breath, do you remember this, Austin? He's also saying we haven't gotten important news like this in like months. Like it's all been softball. Like we're gonna be a laughingstock if we don't start getting exclusives that are worth something. And I'm like, okay, so now it sounds kind of self-serving. Now we're back to the sensationalist bit.
Well, especially because at that point, they don't really know anything. Like, they just know that something happened at the nuclear power plant, and they have footage of people, in the control room, working.
Yeah, running around freaking out for a second. And then, everything's okay.
But they don't have any audio. So
yeah.
Like, they don't even really know what's happening. Yeah.
Well, and then isn't it interesting that to that point that the system, I mean, in the power plant, like all the fail-safes, it does ultimately work by the end. Because the most intense part of the movie is right at the end when parts start falling over and like breaking. And I'm like, I actually thought of Beneath the Planet of the Apes because I was like, is this going to end like that? Is this alternate history thing where California drops into the ocean because Jack Lemmon couldn't stop the power plant from boiling over? And because
that's the good timeline when California is destroyed.
And because the power plant manager set it up to intentionally cause the same problem that we had at the beginning, just as a distraction to get in there, is that actually going to ruin everything? And then by the end, it's all ultimately okay. I mean, there's a ton of damage and stuff, but like, I mean, that doesn't mean that there was never any danger.
Yeah. Yeah, and it gets, like you said, it gets really suspenseful in places. Like, even that first bit where like it's looking like it's gonna have a meltdown early on, like that scene's really intense, and it's mainly just close-ups of actors looking worried and like a dial that's slowly ticking down. But it's super effective.
I love how minimalistic all of that is too. Where I kept in the back of my mind going, "There's no special effects."
And there's a lot of close-ups of just people hitting knobs.
Yeah.
And it works so well, yeah.
But like, I'm almost having to remind myself of the filmmaking of it, like what's happening behind it, because I'm buying all of it. Like, it feels like it's really happening. It's wonderful. This holds up spectacularly for a 50-year-old film.
No, and with those, like that scene specifically, like Jack Lemmon and
45-year-old film.
Yeah, Jack Lemmon and Wilford Brimley are really good as like the kind of two main people in the power plant.
Is that the
He's got like the crazy mustache.
Yeah. So when I was growing up, I knew him mostly
the diabetes guy
from the diabetes commercials. Check your blood sugar and check it often.
You may have the diabetes. Yeah, of course.
No, a lot of daytime television. You always saw those, like reruns of the Andy Griffith Show. Yeah. Like, your diabetes testing supplies. Check your blood sugar and check it often.
Yeah, I know him as one of the main characters in John Carpenter's The Thing and as the diabetes guy.
Okay, so I hadn't seen The Thing in a long time, and I forgot he was in that. I noticed that when I was looking at credits of his later. But so while I was watching it, I was hit with... Because I guess I had, but while I was watching it, I was hit with, I've never seen this guy act. I've just seen him in commercials. Because he was also the spokesperson for one of the cereal companies.
Oh, okay. See, it was really interesting for me.
Was it Kellogg's? What was it? I forget.
Because he looks like the exact
Quaker
same,
Oats. He was the Quaker Oats guy.
Oh, okay, weird. He looks like the exact same as he does in The Thing, except a little bit thinner. And like that's pretty much it. I was like, oh, that's weird. Like he looks like the exact same person. Okay.
This movie had a huge cast characters of actors that I've seen in all kinds of things. Austin, you won't be familiar with this guy, but it also features toward the end one of the like plant executive guys that's making decisions toward the end, the like real stern-faced guy. That is Admiral Owen Paris from Star Trek Voyager, and he's also in the V miniseries.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I knew obviously like the main Trinity and Wilford Brimley, I think, were the only actors in this that I knew.
Richard Hurd, that's his name, yeah. There were a couple of other people that I recognized from stuff that, I guess the big one I was hoping would come up was the diabetes guy. But yeah, I definitely recognized some other people too.
I'm glad we can all go. He's the guy that says diabetes.
Stone Gasman put in a $5 super chat and says, and I'll scroll up and get the other super chats, guys. In my book, Jack Lemmon's finest performance, and it's the only character he's ever played to die on screen. Interesting bit of trivia. I didn't know that. He won BAFTA and Cannes Best Actor awards. I did read that he won Best Actor at the Cannes Festival, and that's where it debuted.
Oh, you know what? I think I was thinking of that and not the Oscars. That it was like big at Cannes, I think.
It should have won Oscars if it didn't.
Mm-hmm. At least nominated, yeah.
But 79 is also a big year.
Yeah, that is true.
Robert Wild, $2 super chat. I just saw this film recently. Absolutely loved it.
Which reminds me, somebody, because earlier you said the Sigourney Weaver thing, and somebody said that she wasn't big at this point, and that makes sense. This is like a year after Alien, I think.
Yeah, that just happened.
Mm-hmm.
If this script is floating around 3 or 4 years after this, I could have seen her in the running for that role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And I had never really compared her and Jane Fonda before, but they have similar like dramatic sensibilities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. And I feel like that kind of reporter thing is like maybe like a go-to, like just like a thing that I think about with Sigourney Weaver, even though I can't think of a role offhand
where she did that. Yeah,
where she did that. And I think part of that is because as a kid I always thought she was April O'Neil in the first.
Well, I was gonna say after this I was like Jane Fonda should have been April O'Neil.
Well, I already thought she was Amy Adams' Lois Lane, so...
Yeah, Jajir, I was going to say the same thing, but I didn't want to just, like, correct Austin. But, yeah, this was the same year as Alien. They're both 79.
For some reason, I thought Alien was 78. Okay.
No, it's 79.
I'm so bad with my years. To me, just everything came out in 78. It's like the most important year in film.
I'm typically pretty good at it for movies I know well. Superman... of course, I never forget a 78, but starts with the motion picture, I'm always off on.
See, and I thought Superman was 79. For some reason, I thought it was like exactly a decade before Batman. But okay, so that's 78.
Yeah, it's 78.
See, I don't know my years.
It comes out too early to be directly influenced by Star Wars.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Or all that influenced. I mean,
yeah. There's no Halloween in that first Superman movie because it's 78. If it was 79, there would have been a lot of Halloween.
Hey, I started making a point like 100,000 years ago, and let me see if I can get back to that real quick. So the bit that I found most surprising, remember when I started saying that like half an hour ago?
Oh, yeah.
The bit I found most surprising, this is how this show always goes, is when Jack Lemmon has this massive opportunity for change, right? He's at home. He's already decided to work with a journalist, but he's trying to do it anonymously, right? Because he doesn't want to lose his job. And so he's finding himself in the position of having to be a corporate whistleblower. And he's like, I love that moment where all by himself he goes, how did I get in this place? You know, what am I doing? And like, he knows it's the right thing. He has to. And that's what makes him so endearing. And why you don't lose it. You don't lose him. You're still with him when he pulls the gun on everybody, as crazy as that is. And when he gets that desperate. But the thing that surprised me more than anything was when he gets the phone call that the token black guy has run his car off the road, or has had his car run off the road, and I'm glad that guy survived, because I was like, oh yes, of course, he's the one black man in the movie, so of course he has to die, and he doesn't die. So that was good. It still felt a little typical, where it's like the worst thing that happens to a person has to happen to our token black guy. That, 70s. I want to say just that. We had that as recent as frickin' First Class.
They made up for it by killing Jack Lemmon.
That's a good point. The black man survives. Jack Lemmon is dead. Anyway, so he gets run off the road because he's trying to bring evidence to the hearing on against nuclear power of the mistakes made. Am I right? Wasn't that the information that the mistakes made initially with the X-rays?
Yeah.
And this is where the big conspiracy stuff comes in. Somebody gets hired by the company working for the power plant and runs him off the road, tries to do the same thing to Jack Lemmon. Jack Lemmon was having a little bit too much fun in the car. Did you notice that? Where he's like, yeah, I'm in an action scene. So when he leaves his house, what you think is going to happen is that he's going to go to the hearing and testify. Because Jane Fonda or whoever it is that's on the phone with him is like, I can't remember which of them talks to him, but the other person on the phone says, you've got to get to the hearing, and he drops everything and leaves, and I'm like, oh man, he's gonna have to out himself, he's gonna lose his job, like everything is on the line now. And he goes not there but to the power plant, and I went, what? That was the most shocking moment of the whole movie to me, is he goes to the power plant. I had no idea what was going to happen after that.
Yeah.
All bets are off after he does that.
You know what my most shocking moment was? 5 seconds into the film, I'm on Amazon, and it's like, you got like the cast and trivia, and just on a whim I was like, I'll see what trivia is at the start of this, and I click it, and it's like, Michael Douglas is in this film as like one of his first films as Jane Fonda's sidekick. And then 15 minutes in, I'm like, oh, that wasn't true.
That's not the role he's in. Maybe for those first 15 minutes.
Yeah, he's like their cameraman. After that, not at all.
No, and I thought that they were going to be rivals through most of the movie. I
did too.
Once they're on kind of opposite sides for a minute. And then suddenly, this keeps happening with characters that I think are going to get thrown under the bus, that end up having a real angle. And you go, okay, he's hippie-ish, he's anti-establishment, he's acting a little bit even anarchist, and then he takes the footage not to I thought he was gonna somehow broadcast it or send it to another news organization or something.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Everybody was gonna see that footage, and instead, if he was gonna steal it, I mean, what he did was illegal, but he did the smartest thing he could, which is he went and figured out what was really going on at that plant. He was doing investigative journalism, and he goes, I found out that I'm right, that it was dangerous and people need to know about this. And suddenly I'm kind of sympathetic. I'm kind of getting why he's doing what he's doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. No, I had the same thing too, where I was like, okay, this is a shift. Now he's going to be the antagonist, maybe. And it never really happened.
No, it wasn't. And then he's not even all that important or featured after that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's exactly there.
No, he kind of gets his big moment and then kind of drifts off in the background to let Jack Lemmon have more time.
Well, is this Jack Lemmon's movie, or is it a dual protagonist piece? Because I'm going to say dual protagonist piece.
I think dual protagonist, but I also think it jumps around. There are sections where it's one or the other. It's not like they're dual protagonists throughout. It's got that kind of a setup.
You think it's almost like, maybe not vignettes, but subplots certainly.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, converging. I mean, they're all dealing with the same thing, but.
Well, I think the way I see it that way is just because Jack Lemmon doesn't really come in until the 20-minute mark, I think, and then he doesn't really become a dual protagonist until even a bit after that. So like there's like a whole stretch for a while where it's just Jane Fonda, and then it becomes more about him, and then it kind of like shifts back to I think being more balanced.
But I think the structure really works.
Oh no, it definitely does. Definitely does.
Like it's funny. When I had Whiplash, it was correct. It was
It's on
appropriate.
purpose. Yeah,
Yeah, and I
absolutely.
was always with it. Is there anything in this movie that doesn't work?
Offhand
Because
on
I don't have
like
a great deal in the way
first
of criticism.
viewing, yeah, on a first viewing, I didn't really have anything that stood out to me. Like I said, I had like a kind of weird first viewing, so like there's maybe stuff I missed, but I nothing stood out to me as like a big criticism.
Initially, I thought maybe it was a little bit too convenient that the hearing was happening at the same time that the power plant was having these problems.
Mhm.
And the more I thought about it, the more that also seemed pretty believable.
Yeah,
That you had all of this. Because at first I was like, I don't think I was fully understanding the situation, admittedly. Because at first I was like, well, you have all this controversy about nuclear power at exactly the same time as there's a problem in the nuclear power plant. And then I'm like, oh, but it's new. Like,
and they're opening a new one, and like
and
they're trying to get that worked
that's
through.
what I was gonna say.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so that really works narratively, but also if this was a thing happening in the real world, that's pretty plausible. Where it's like you have a company that is cutting corners, that's rushing out nuclear power plants almost like, I mean, this is hyperbolic, but I think the way it's supposed to play in the movie, once you find out the corners they've cut, it feels sort of like trying to like just throw up like high rise apartments as fast as possible or something.
Mhm.
That kind of thing. Like they're doing it like real estate. You just throw it up real fast. It's like that's nuclear power. We need to have a little bit more. We need to be more careful. We need to have a little bit more responsibility with this, right? And
Yeah,
so
spare
they
no expense.
exactly. I'm so glad you brought up Jurassic Park. That massively enriched this conversation because I had not had that thought. And then as soon as you said that, I was like, "Yep, that is the perfect comparison." Um, so they've only had this nuclear power plant for like 4 years, or I guess 6. But Lemon's been working there for. Is that what it is?
Yeah, I think so.
And so it's already starting to have these problems, and they're going to make another one. So yeah, of course there's hearings going on. Like
Mhm.
that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, and that whole thing reminded me because like they talk about like I think it's like the pipes or something where they're like, oh, they kind of skirt through some of the investigation with that stuff, even though it's deteriorated. It made me think of I forget who it was, but someone in my family used to work at like a Coke factory,
Oh,
and they talked about how they would have like this big, I think like steel like pot thing that was like giant that they would like pour it in through, and like you'd have to replace it like every few years because it would like the Coke would eat through the steel at the bottom, and it made me think of that a little bit.
oh wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I don't know. These places are dangerous. What was
Yeah,
surreal to me, and
basically any industry.
the reason I kept thinking that you could easily substitute nuclear power for some kind of futuristic tech that's like really dangerous, but we're using it anyway because it's convenient. We've already built the infrastructure. The reason I had that thought so early while I was watching this is because I had a kind of surreal experience in seeing a movie when nuclear power is relatively new.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say that too, with your sci-fi thing. Like, we're what, only like 30 years really into having that kind of capability.
Yeah. And
Hmm.
it's still new enough that people aren't trusting it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. No, because you think 30 years, like, it's a long time, but not really.
Well, and
Especially for
also
something that big.
consider like 30 years at that point though is long enough to start seeing some of the real fallout from like the bomb drops in Nagasaki and in Hiroshima and stuff. And so you've got to have people, and this wasn't brought up in the movie, but there was discussion about cancer and stuff. People have got to be thinking, oh, now we know. I don't know when signs of disease started happening in the real world with those countries with the bomb drop, but like tell me people aren't thinking about that. We're like, okay, if we have a nuclear meltdown, now people are gonna get not cancer. What was the, why can't I think of it? Just like the main disease that people got from the bomb drop in
I thought it was
Nagasaki.
cancer, but like I don't know, like radiation poisoning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
somebody will say it in the comments. I can't think of it right now, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. When somebody earlier mentioned that this film came out around
Leukemia.
the same time. Leukemia.
Yeah.
This film came out around the same time as it's something Mile Island. I can't remember.
Yes, I was gonna mention that too. I'm glad somebody brought that up. 10 Mile Island.
10 Mile Island. Yeah. The thing from the first Wolverine movie.
So what happened, part of the reason this movie does as well as it does, and it was just coincidence, the kind of coincidence that if you wrote it in a movie, I'd like, you know, I complain that was too coincidental, but like these things happen in real life, you know, I'm a prude about coincidence. Like 13 days, I think I read after the movie was released, that happens.
Wow, that's crazy.
And so then people go, oh, this is a really poignant film.
I feel like...
And it already was, but
and that
much
could
more
have
so
gone
then.
Either way, right?
3 Mile Island, pardon
3
me.
Mile Island, okay. And that could have gone either way.
8 Mile Island.
Yeah, it's that island where Eminem went nuts.
I guess we shouldn't joke about this. I don't know. Anyway, go ahead.
No, I feel like that's one of those things that could have gone either way, right? Like, you have a movie like this that comes out right at the exact same time that something similar to it happens, and you could have had people go like, "Oh, that's too scary. Like, not right now. Like, I don't want to see that."
Yeah.
But it's interesting. It almost had the Stand effect, where Stephen King talks about how anytime there's like a flu outbreak, the Stand, has like a huge bump in sales.
Yeah. I wonder if that happened during COVID, because I didn't hear about that.
I imagine so. That was a big thing I was thinking about when COVID happened. I was like, I bet the Stand is flying off shelves right now.
The Stand is flying off the Stand?
Yeah. Well, and there was that big Gwyneth Paltrow pandemic movie that was like 10 years old at that point, I think.
Oh.
It was on Netflix, and like that got a huge bump in viewership when COVID started.
No, you're right. That can go either way. And I think Hollywood gets real gun-shy about it. Where when something, when there's a big travesty that's anywhere remotely close to the situation of a movie that they've already got in the can that they're about to release, very often they'll wait on it and not put it out right away. I think
you saw that a lot with 9/11.
9/11, I think, and with stuff that wasn't remotely like 9/11.
Yeah.
But
just
then
like anything with the towers with 9/11.
Yeah, but then you have things like 24 starts just a few weeks before 9/11 happens, or maybe just a couple weeks before that, and then that show is probably way more popular because that happens, because it's so timely, and there's a catharsis to look, we're actually, we don't feel helpless, we can actually fight the terrorists, because we all felt helpless when 9/11 happened, and look, Jack Bauer's out there, he's getting them,
Yeah.
and so now it's popular, it gets 8 seasons. This is probably like that, where it's already out, and then that happens.
Yeah, then people go like, oh man, check out this movie. Yeah, absolutely.
Austin, this is absolutely a ReQuest Hall of Fame movie.
Yeah, I was thinking about that today. I was like, I can't remember if we like just haven't had anything worthy of it, or if we keep forgetting to bring it up. But I was like, I need to make sure to remember to bring up that. Yeah, this would definitely make the Hall of Fame for ReQuest.
Well, what we need to do is update our ranked lists for this show, because I haven't been doing it. Maybe you have.
I haven't put this one on yet. I was just about to before we started because I remembered. But
you're really good at actually keeping up your Letterboxd, and I never think to do it, and I should.
I've been having so much fun this year because I got like the pro one where it's like you can see all your stats through the year and what you watch. I've been having too much fun on that.
Oh, that's cool. So it's turned into a hobby.
Yeah, it's turned into like a little fun thing where I can be like, ooh, like look at all these different things. Like it breaks down like what studio I watch more of, or like what actors I've seen the most this year and stuff, and it becomes like a fun little game.
But yeah, I want to update that, and then I want to actually come up with the official Hall of Fame, and then maybe slowly start actually doing what I keep saying I want to do, and buy all the Hall of Fame movies physical, and then get them on a special shelf back here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And so if you make a request for something that's actually really good, I mean, you don't have to request good things. Sometimes people request not so great things on purpose just because they're curious what our response will be. And then every now and again, somebody will request something that they love that we don't. But it doesn't happen that much. But it is possible that what you request could wind up on the Hall of Fame shelf. How many do you think we've got so far? It's probably like 5 or 6, maybe 7. Maybe it's better than that.
I have quite a few here. It'll take me like 5 seconds to
Oh,
pull up
sure.
the list. And I can tell you.
Now, there would be 1 or 2 that maybe you and I wouldn't agree with on.
Absolutely.
That you would probably put on your, like Valley of the Dolls isn't going to wind up on mine, but I know it would yours.
Yeah. So I have I would say 16 on here are films that I feel like
16?
Yeah.
What's a lot of movies I have to buy? Why don't you rattle some of them off for us real quick?
So I can go from 16 up. So
No, why are you saying 16?
Why I'm just looking at my list and I'm like, what is the point on here where I would like consider buying this movie?
Yeah.
So I just went off of that.
Oh, okay.
So I got Prince of Egypt, Anchors Away, Army of Darkness, About Time, Dawn of the Dead, The Iron Giant, The Outfit, Night Shift, Perfect Blue.
Oh, The Outfit. Yeah.
Mm.
What a good movie. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah. What did you say after Night Shift is great too. What did you say after that? Well, Night Shift has a not great third act, but I probably liked it well enough to put it there.
I feel like I also liked it more than you did, but yeah. I don't know. It was fun. I liked that movie.
I'll also buy things Austin liked more than me, I guess.
Yeah,
and put it on my Hall of Fame shelf. Go ahead.
Perfect Blue, Psycho, Charade.
Oh, Perfect Blue was spectacular. I forgot all about that.
Really good.
Yeah. What was that? What was that for Perfect Blue?
Psycho, Charade.
Yeah, of course. Oh, Charade. Forgot about that.
Yeah, I've been meaning to rewatch that.
I've been meaning to show my wife that movie. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
What was that? 1960?
I don't remember the year.
I don't remember
anymore. 63.
There you go. And Anchors Away was right around there too, was it not?
That's earlier. No, that's 45.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. It's been a while.
It's okay.
I knew that wasn't a 60s movie. I'm sorry. Oh, we'll cut that part.
You got Seven Samurai. Both,
of course.
Both Harrison Ford.
I bought Seven Samurai on Criterion though, so
nice.
I do have that one.
You do have your first bit for that Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I own a few. I mean, I've got a copy of Iron Giant. I could put that there too.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a good movie.
Then you have both Harrison Ford, Jack Ryan films, Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, and Evil Dead 2. Those are the films that I would put on the Hall of Fame for me.
Okay. Yeah, I would go for almost all of those.
Except Beyond the Valley of the Dolls.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't bring myself to put that one there. That's just a Austin sensibility thing.
It's got a really pretty Criterion release, though.
Well, and I want to say I don't like Prince of Egypt as well as you, but I think I reviewed it pretty glowing.
No, we were both really positive on it. That's like on my lower end of it, where I'm like, yeah, I like that movie, all right. Like I'd rewatch that. I'd maybe buy it.
The animation was spectacular.
Yeah, no, the animation was really nice.
Robert, how big is the Hall of Fame in the Bat Bunker? Well, I haven't built it yet, so I don't even know where it's going to go yet. It'll probably go on the shelf back here that currently has paperback sci-fi books on it. I'll probably just clear a shelf of those and build it there.
And then you can make a Hall of Shame where we put all the really bad movies, and then you can make a Hall of everything else.
This is going to get expensive, and I'm going to wonder why I'm spending so much money on it. It's these folks have been cool enough to request on Patreon, and I put every penny back in buying the movies that were requested. The nice thing about this show is that most of these things I can stream, so I don't have to actually pay for, or don't have to pay very much for them.
Yeah, yeah, it's not too bad.
because we do have to rent quite a bit. But
Yeah, it's whatever. It's not too bad.
I had to rent this one.
Yeah, same. I think I've rented the last few.
Yeah. I'm finding that all the streaming services I'm paying for are kind of useless, and
Yeah, they got nothing on them.
I may have to just drop all those and just start renting everything because I'm doing that anyway. It feels like.
Well, I think Next is maybe on Netflix, but I don't have Netflix anymore. And
I don't remember where I watched next.
And I might just be saying that because I know that The Knowing is on Netflix, and they're the same premise.
Yeah. Next just made me say next.
Next.
Okay, so anyway, thanks a lot, Stone Gasman. This movie was wonderful, and it was a joy to talk about and to watch. Next time, we're gonna do another movie I know nothing about that Hot Soup requested called Collateral. Do you know anything about that movie?
Oh, I think that's a Tom Cruise movie, like
That
an
rings a
action
bell.
movie that I've heard is really good.
That rings a bell. I want to say we've done something Tom Cruise on this show.
I don't think so.
Maybe you
That
and
could
I
be.
haven't. I know I had to do. Maybe I had to do a Tom Cruise film a long time ago. I forget now.
But I want to say Collateral comes out in like the same.
2004.
I want to say like people throw that out in like the same sentence with like Minority Report, where they talk about like the really good Tom Cruise films from like around that time.
It is described as a neo-noir action thriller
And I think he has gray hair in it.
with it's like gray highlights. It looks like with Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx,
Oh, cool.
and it's an early Mark Ruffalo movie.
Interesting. Yeah, I've heard
Because this would have been around the same time as Zodiac, right?
Yes?
Which,
Question mark?
Which he's in, and I've done a commentary on now.
I've still never seen Zodiac. I saw like a little bit of Seven, but the other day, but I need to actually go back and finish
Seven's
it.
great. Zodiac was 07, so yeah, 3 years after that.
Oh, so that's even later than I thought it was.
Yeah,
I was
that
like, that could be like late 90s. I don't know. But that makes sense because it's also got Downey, so it would have been like right around his comeback.
5590 ERS, is there a ReQuest Hall of Fame for comics? We would have to go back through the list.
Yeah, the issue with comics is like for that kind of stuff is there's nothing like Letterboxd where it's like really easy to rank it. Same with TV shows.
We just have to do it manually.
Yeah, I'd have to like open a note on my phone and like that's annoying.
Yeah. And the way I've broadcast these could make that difficult too, because early on I don't think I always put them under the ReQuest header. I think sometimes it was Vault, so we'd have to figure out which ones were ReQuest and which ones weren't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's like a few that I remember offhand. Like I know we did Planet Hulk, we did Gail Simone Deadpool, like as like the older ones, but
yeah, and we got a lot more comics later.
Yeah,
like it's true. Like 1 out of 4 right now. It feels like.
No, it's been a good mix. It's been cool.
Yeah, we really encouraged comic picks, especially because I've kind of streamlined and I'm not broadcasting quite as much, so we don't get to do comics every week right now. We weren't necessarily doing that before either, but you know, it's even harder to work it in now. So when somebody requests it, I get excited because then we get a vault.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we got to do the first appearance of Ego and High Evolutionary.
Oh yeah,
2 weeks ago.
That was fun. Cool. And I think pretty soon we're gonna have another comic review, Austin. Doolittle asked for Legends from DC. I've always wanted to read that.
Oh yeah, I remember because I was talking to him when he read it, and I'm interested to read that too. I picked it up a few months ago, and I was reading like some Byrne Superman and Perez Wonder Woman, and that was when I first got to see like kind of what Legends is about, just through like tie-in stuff. And I didn't realize that DC basically did Civil War like 20 years before Marvel did.
Yeah. It's one of those books that is well regarded, but I want to say it like this: it's well regarded, but not well remembered. Like people bring it up, and then I don't remember what happens in that.
And that's where
I had single
Suicide
issues
Squad
of it.
comes from.
Say again?
And that's where Suicide Squad comes from as Legends.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it spins off of that event.
I had
Ostrander event, I think.
I think it is. I had 2 or 3 issues of that early on when I first started collecting comics when I was like 7 or 8. And I had that creepy cover with the guy holding his arms up with the big smile on his face. He's all creepy. And it was like Cry Havoc, I think it said. And then it's got all the superhero costumes and the heads are gone like poofs of smoke. It's super creepy.
Oh, cool. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. That's what I remember from Legends. And then I got a couple more issues of that.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about it, and then the tie-ins were like, "Oh, there's this like government guy, and he's like, I want to legalize the superheroes," and I was like, "Oh, wait a minute, this is just DC's Civil War, like way before that."
So that'll be fun. We'll get to talk about that, and then right after that, we have to do Earth X.
I don't even know what that is, Earth X.
Oh, the art in that is super cool. But that is, I want to say that's an Alex Ross thing.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if he did the interiors or just the covers, but yeah, I read Universe X and had no idea what the hell I was looking at. But then I later looked at Earth X and I was like, oh, now I understand what this is a sequel to. Okay. Anyway, we're going to go and get going. Everybody, thanks a lot for watching and listening. Hope you enjoyed it. Once again, Stone Gasman, thanks for the pick, and always excited to see what he does next, if he picks something else. And Austin and I are going to be back in just a little while for anybody that wants to stay up really late with us, and I'm going to do some retro gameplay. I'm going to play some Sega Genesis, so feel free to come back and hang out with us if you want to, and in the meantime, Captain Logan Show tomorrow night at 7 Central, and we'll have another Rewind commentary on Friday. We're actually going to do a double feature on Superman Doomsday and Batman Beyond Return of the Joker, but probably not in that order.
Yeah, I don't think we've decided what the order is. We'll see.
I had more or less figured we'd do Batman first, just do it chronologically, but...
Yeah. Yeah, it's whatever.
But then, it's hard to decide because, any way you slice it, like, if you do Batman first, then everybody leaves. But if you do Superman Doomsday first, then maybe nobody will ever show up. Yeah. So anyway, we'll see you later, folks. I was Captain Logan, and this was Austin, the Day Ghost.
See you guys.
Bye, folks.